Hello and welcome back to the show today. I have a very special episode. We have a guest, Noella Green. She is an absolute gem of knowledge in the world of female athlete training and considerations with the menstrual cycle. I'm really excited to share this episode with you. There's lots of information that I learned from this being in the non-clinical background and the more healthy pop or elite level athlete. So it's really exciting. I hope you enjoy her episode with her, and let's get stuck into it. Hello, Noella. How are you?
I'm so good. How are you?
Good, good. I'm really excited to chat to you today um, about female athletes or women's health in general, really, because we're both super passionate about that. But I'd love for you to just give a little bit of background about you, your story, and like how you became, like, I guess, how you got to where you are in your career now.
Yeah, such a whirlwind. So born and bred in Far North Queensland. I went to uni in Townsville, 4 hours south of Cairns. Did all my clinical sort of experience up there. Came down for my last year of practical to Sydney. And I was a uni student. I had everything packed in my car. So I kind of just drove down, and then I did my prac down here at the Sydney Adventist Hospital and with West Tigers. And 3 days before I was
Oh,
meant to, yeah, I was like 3 days before I was meant to drive back to Queensland, I got offered a job in clinical exercise physiology, workers' compensation. So I was like, got everything in the
workers'
car.
compensation. Were you like so excited?
Well, look, at the time, you're bright-eyed and bushy-tailed coming out of uni. You're like, yes, job, money, cool.
I know.
Um,
Isn't it?
so
I feel like it's a little bit of a different time though, because I felt the same. But now I feel like there's so many job options for people that they like everyone can be like, oh, maybe, maybe not.
yeah, you definitely there's just that wall over your eyes. You don't realize what's actually out there as a
Yeah.
clinical exercise physiologist until you actually go and live in the real world.
Oh yeah.
Um,
100%.
yeah, so it definitely took its toll on me, the workers' compensation side of things. I did the progression of treating and workers' comp, going and working for an insurance company, um, and then even went to work for an employer to do
Mm,
their return to work side of things. And I just kind of found being in that clinical space, it was really reactive. And you would spend 80% of your time on 20% of the people.
yeah, okay.
And they had to come and see you, right? Like it was because wages and all that kind of stuff would be put on the table. It's like, if you don't comply with this, you could reduce your payments or you lose your payments. And that's not how I like to operate.
Mm.
So I ended up sort of pulling right out of that space, got into the safety space, so work health and safety. And that sort of actually allowed me to come into the world and go, hey, how can we actually stop people from getting injured in the workplace? So I
Yeah,
still
okay.
do that work part time. Um, and then I guess with my clinical work that I do, so that's probably, I'd like to say Thursdays and Saturdays, I do that, and anything after hours from the other job. It would have started, gosh, a couple of years before I was pregnant with my daughter. I'd been on the pill for since I was 14 years old. And
That
then
sounds like
my,
me.
well, they were just like, here you go, you got
Uh,
something wrong with your cycle, have this. And that was the end of it.
yeah, I had the same. I was on the pill from like, I think it was like 13. I feel like it was just after I got my period, and it was for acne.
Yeah.
Really for acne management. And I was like, I think I was like, so I was 13. Like I would have just only got my period.
Right. It's like GPs, like I don't know, it takes 2 years for your cycle to normal or become
I
somewhat
know,
normal or
I
find a
know.
rhythm, right? But for me, that's just, that just shows the world is growing and evolving with the research and information that's out there, right?
Yep.
Um, yeah, so it's pretty much when I was considering the pregnancy side of things, I was like, oh, maybe I should see if my cycle's sort of gone back to normal. And of course,
So
I went
wait,
off the pill.
let just backtrack a second. You
Mm.
jumped on the pill at 14 and then were on it till what age was this when you were
Oh, I would have been 32,
were you on the
32,
pill the whole time?
100%. Yep.
I was on for 9 years straight. And
Yeah.
then I think I came off because I was scared if I fell pregnant, what would happen to my skin? And I was like, I better get on with this and like sort my skin out now. And even 9 years was like a long time, but that's massive.
Yeah. Yeah. It was
Yeah.
20 odd years.
20
Yeah.
years on. The
Yeah,
pill.
I came off the pill. Like I came off the pill. I'm like, oh yeah, let's just see how these ovaries are functioning and the hormones are functioning. And
What hormones?
yeah, and I was like 3 months after it, I was just like all the worst period pain again, really heavy cycles. And I was like, where's that pill back? I can give that back to me. I'll take that. Thank you. But I was just like, no, no, come on. I'm like, you're an exercise physiologist. You can be better than this. So it wasn't until sort of that point, and I was entering the New South Wales rugby program at that time, I was like, nah, got to do something better. So I ended up having a chat to a dietitian, found out that I wasn't eating it anywhere close to enough what I should be eating for like the level that I was training at.
Yeah.
And then
So
as
you were
soon as
doing elite level training as well.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, we haven't really touched on that, but
Oh yeah, no, I always skip that part because I
I'm
was
like,
like,
mate, this is a big part of your story and you're not even telling anyone.
see, this is the reality of being a female elite athlete, right? You actually have full-time work outside, and then
Yeah.
doing this, you do it for hashtag the love.
Yeah.
And then you find out that they're getting paid once you retire, and you're like, well, look, I was part of the group that made the change. It's cool.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about what you're doing sport wise.
Yeah, so when I moved to Sydney, I didn't know anybody down here. So I needed to make friends. So for about 2 years, I struggled to make friends because it's quite a, I'd like to say it's a tight-knit community. It is a tight-knit community.
Yeah.
It's hard to kind of make friends when you go somewhere new. So
Hey, story of
sports,
my life right now. Anyone that's listened to a lot of my episodes here will
yeah,
know that I don't know many people where I live because we moved here. And I'm like, how do you make friends when you're old without sounding like a creep and being like, do
yeah.
you want to hang out? And it's
Team
not a dating
sports.
thing. Like it's just like female friends. And you're like,
Yeah, yeah,
do you like me enough to hang out?
yeah.
Um, anyway, so you moved to Sydney.
Yeah, so I moved to Sydney, decided to play some sports. So I just emailed a couple of rugby clubs, and one of them got back to me. So I started playing rugby union. So that was really the first time I started playing union. I think I was
Oh,
24.
okay. So you didn't
Uh,
play back at home.
nah, nah. I got three
Oh,
big brothers, so I kind of just watched them play footy, and it was rugby league that they played. So
yeah, okay.
yeah, I just happen to be, I don't know, I'm always somebody that if I play sports, I do all right playing sports.
You're just a
Um,
naturally gifted athlete.
yeah, probably the ones that people don't really like. No, but mind you, like when it comes to rugby union, it's a different game. It's an IQ game, right? Like
Yeah.
very IQ, very technical. So I learned that the hard way. I think I got yellow carded in my first game. No, I don't think I did get yellow carded in my first game because I shoulder charged somebody. I'm like, oh, you can do that in league though. And they're like, this is union. I'm like,
You're like, oh, sorry, wrong one.
yeah.
I'll
So
just
I
look
kind
into
of
the rule manual when I get home.
just 3,000 pages long now.
That's so funny.
um, yeah, no, so I kind of moved pretty fast through the rugby union program. I got into the Aussie Sevens training program, missed out on the World Cup. I had a couple of nasty injuries back to back with did all the ligaments in my ankle, fractured my fibula.
Oh,
That took 9 months to come back. So that one took me out of the Rugby World Cup for sevens. Um,
oh, that's a shame.
and then I came back. I pretty much had to not hang my boots up just because it was such a space that I wasn't a contracted player, so I wasn't getting paid anything. And it was probably $20,000 to get paid. And when you live in Sydney, you can't live on $20,000 unless you live with a family.
Yep.
Um, so I had to make the call to pull out of the Aussie squad at that time. Did my rehab, came back, and I think 2 games in, I snapped my collarbone. All
Oh,
contact injuries. So is what it is. But I did CrossFit in between, put on about 7 kilos, and then Super W competition came around. Trialed in my normal position as a back, and I just moved completely different. It was a
mm,
little bit foreign, so I didn't make the inaugural year. When I started playing with Sydney Uni, who had an amazing program. And it was sort of at that point when I started thinking about having a child, and I'd met an awesome dietitian through CrossFit. And that's when I really took a step back and gone, I'd been in so many elite programs that how does nobody talk about this? And
mm.
okay, you know what? I'll just research it myself. And basically, from that point is when I was like, okay, we are not informed. Sporting organisations are not informed. Not only that, they have all these programs that they're trying to compete with male counterparts, except, from a load perspective, you've got young athletes from a male perspective that have been doing rugby union since they were 5 years old. Females might do it from 5 to 12, 13, then they drop out for a period of time. And then
Mm.
if there's a program that supports them playing that sport, they might take it up again.
Yeah,
But
okay.
then once they get into the pathway programs and the elite athlete programs, they're expected to compete and train at a really high level and do it consistently without injury. Whereas the reality is that's not the case. We get absolutely smashed. And, we even had that in the Super W program. You train from November right through to the end of January. And then I think mid-February you start the program. So you train for longer than you actually play in your season, which was 6 weeks.
Yeah,
Um,
right.
yeah, so they kind of wrap you up and get you straight back. You're not necessarily at 100%, but you make it work as a female who does it for the love.
Yeah, right. Well, it sounds
Yeah,
actually when you put it like that, it's actually pretty crazy. Like
yeah.
even just the dropping out. I remember when I was like 13, I'm like, I'm not doing sport anymore. Like I'm so too cool for sport. Or like PE days at school, I'd be like, oh, I forgot my uniform. Or I'd be like, I've got my period, I can't exercise.
Oh my gosh, I have so many friends that did that as well.
I was
My,
the
I,
worst.
I, I
I
was
was the
one of
worst.
them.
And it was only because I just couldn't be bothered getting dressed to play sport and then be sweaty and smelly after. Like it's actually pretty
Yeah,
gross when you think about it. But
yeah.
yeah, I guess a lot of females do that and then they're like, oh, I actually miss playing sport or like
Mm,
you jumping into
yeah.
like, making friends or whatever it is. So you've got like I actually like I'm actually surprised your athlete history wasn't like earlier. I actually thought it was more
Oh,
pre-uni and that's what made you like get into
yeah.
XFiz. But yeah, so now you obviously have this history of elite level athlete and seeing,
Mm,
I guess, the lack of education around female specific health in sport. Um, I guess. So what does that look like for you now? Are you working
mm. Yeah,
doing this
so
as work? Because like
yeah,
you mentioned earlier being in like workplace safety. So different. So tell us more about
100%.
like the work you do in regard to the women's health side.
Yeah, cool. So I still have part-time do the work health and safety side of things, live in Sydney, got to pay the bills until I transition across to my clinical business
Yeah.
entirely. But all my clinical, so with respect to the clinical, so I do a lot of group education. So whether that be, and I say education, there's an education component, but I also make it seminars and workshops where we actually do engaging activities, especially when
Yeah.
you're working with a whole bunch of young athletes. So I do workshops with young athletes in their pathway programs. I'm talking about either sports bras, menstrual cycle, load management, nutrition, recovery. I also buddy that up to have making sure coaches and the support staff are in that program. Sometimes I do the sessions with them earlier just so that they're across the information prior to delivering it to their athletes.
Mm,
And
okay.
sometimes it's good because I kind of try and throw that in there, and it depends the organization, right? If they're a local community club, it's a little bit different. Whereas if you've got the pathway programs, I'm like, no, you guys are pathway programs. You've got the resources to do this. This is who I am. This is my professional background. And if you want to engage me as a contractor to come in and do work, tell me what your female athlete program looks like and how you
Mm,
support the female athlete. Because I said, if there's an opportunity for you to do something a little bit different or spend a little bit more time here supporting the female athlete, you'll actually maximize what you're getting out of your female athletes, but you're also maintaining their physical and mental health along the way.
yeah.
Um,
Okay.
yeah. So
So
that's
are they like it's like you get to look at their curriculum, I guess what you would call it? Like,
yeah, you kind of look, it's kind of like the high performance programs, right?
yeah.
So and I've seen a huge change from my time as an athlete. We were in a condensed program for a period of time, then you roll straight back into club programs. Whereas what I'm starting to see now with the pathway programs is that they'll do camps. They spend time going through quality skills, teaching athletes about strength training, and they usually get me to come and deliver a component of that workshop in there. So it could be about
Yeah, okay.
nutrition, pelvic floor, pelvic stability exercises, how they change that a little bit different for female athletes. So that's kind of, I guess, what I do there. I do a little bit of contract work with Griffith University. So I went up to PNG at the back end of last year to basically look at their high performance program for their women's team, just to make sure that they were doing everything they could to sort of maximise their rugby World Cup, I can't even say it,
World
World
Cup.
Cup opportunities in the coming years.
Yeah, right, okay.
Yeah, so I thoroughly enjoy, like, I enjoy doing that big group activity just because you can impact a lot of people in one go.
Mm.
So whether that's young
Yeah.
athletes or
And I
just,
guess your stuff is more like education and strategies around this. Like you're not writing the program for
no,
the elite athletes. But I mean,
no,
I mean, we've got all this knowledge around female physiology and the impact it has on pretty much every part of your life. But it
mm,
just still blows my mind that they don't have this as an ingrained part of the whole program. Because
yeah,
like I'd love to actually dive into a little bit more about like the research behind like specifically the menstrual cycle. I feel like that's a
mm,
lot of your work is around
yeah,
that and
yep,
kind of like balancing it out, I guess.
yeah,
And like what it means in a sense of like, do we need to consider all of this type of stuff? And in what sense do we need to consider it from
mm,
like both a research perspective, but also like clinically, like
yep,
the actual application of it and what that means
mm,
showing up or like, in reality, what can we actually do for them?
yeah,
So can you give us a little bit of like information about
yeah.
that? Like what do we do?
Yeah, like honestly, for me, I come down to, like, I talk about the menstrual cycle, and like one of the first questions that I ask with the female athletes that I like, as soon as I go into a workshop, whether it's athletes or coaches and support staff, I'm like, what are the two female sex hormones? And like you
Do
get a
they
little
know?
bit of, well, look, I'd say I like to say it's probably less than 50%, which is surprising sometimes, right?
Really?
Yeah, but just like they don't understand that. And then when you go to the school curriculum, and I don't discredit the school curriculum because teachers do an amazing job with the time that they
Mm.
have.
Oh yeah.
That's so I know what they get at school, but I also go, hey guys, you're not here for a sex education class. I'm actually going to teach you about your menstrual cycle, the key hormones, how they might make you feel. But I said, we're also going to overload that into your training and what your training looks like. What I see in female programs is that pretty much cookie cut from a different program, or if there's a male counterpart, they basically cookie cut that program and say, yep, women, you guys can do exactly the same, or female
Mm.
athletes, you guys can do exactly the same and get the same outcome. We might be able to get the same outcome, but we do that at reduced health. We get injuries, illness, all kinds of other bits and pieces that come in. So for me, when it comes to the menstrual cycle, I think there's lots of, when I say lots of research, there's more research coming out these days that says it can be pro or con, right? Depending on different cycles. So you could be low hormone, high hormone phase.
Yeah.
How you train it depends on how you feel, and you'll find research that
Yeah.
supports training on either side of it. But for me, when I talk to the young female athletes or female athletes that are in their professional careers, it's basically, when does your period start? When does it finish? What kind of what kind of symptoms are you having during that menstrual cycle, during that period phase? What can you control 5 days before your period? Because your period is usually or your period symptoms are going to be worse the day before, the day of, or the day after you get your bleed.
Yeah.
So if you can control that before you come into your menstrual cycle, you should be able to train pretty well once you do get your period. Um, so,
Yeah.
and you know what? There's apps that are out there as well, but all you need is a calendar. It's like, and I basically tell them, I'm like, when do you start? When do you get your period? And when do you get your period again? So what's your cycle? What's halfway through? And do you get any sort of symptoms in between? I said, that's all you've really got to monitor. I said, if you put your training and your sporting performance into it, you can start to go, okay, well, if I'm doing something really intense, or if we're in a strength building phase, or if we're really pushing ourselves on a cardiovascular perspective, how am I feeling at this point in comparison to the following time that I do that? But I always say you basically need to track your menstrual cycle for a 3-month period just to work out what your normal is, because the normal in a textbook is basically, your 28 days, your 5 days.
Mm.
Whereas, when it comes to female athletes or females in general, your cycle is going to be different to what my cycle is, right? And I think before I had my daughter, my cycle was 21 days. And now I've had my daughter, it's 28 days, sometimes 29 days. So for me, it's really about that education about, okay, yes, this is my menstrual cycle. This is when I get my period. Hey, these are times that I tend to be most symptomatic. And then talking about training load is, I basically say to the athletes, I'm like, your coach has 30, 40 athletes and they've got a program. The coach can't give 40 different programs because of females on different cycles. And I said, you as an athlete actually need to go, okay, how can I maximize my training to get the best sporting outcomes? And I said, if you're actually feeling pretty shitty and you're not training well, you can't focus, you've got back pain, either have a rest day or decrease what you're doing in that load. So rather than going full tilt 100%, let's pull that back to about 80%. And I said, let's just work on executing some really basic skills. So I always liken it to a fitness test in rugby union with a Bronco. So a Bronco is baseline 20, baseline 40, baseline 60, and you do that 5 times for time. So if you're feeling really good, you don't do it full tilt. You probably do it at about 85%, so you can maintain the
Yep.
intensity the whole way through. So if you've got no dramas, no concerns, no symptoms, you're feeling tip top, you just go through and do it. Whereas if you're actually not feeling well, then I say, you know what, let's just pull that back to about 80%. And I said, really focus on your turn. So every time you hit a line, you're coming out 3 steps really powerful. And I said, if you do that, you can either maintain your time or do better, because I said, you're just fine tuning a skill that you already have.
Yeah,
So
right.
that's how I sort of talk to the menstrual cycle side of things, rather than saying, okay, in the low hormone phase, train really hard, or the high hormone phase, reduce it, or vice versa, whatever it may be. I'm like, you need to do, your body best. So you need to adjust based on how you're feeling.
Yeah, I think that's so cool because I always get questions about like, oh, should I be doing more lower intensity stuff in this phase of my cycle? And I'm like, mate, the research is pretty all over the place with this,
Yeah,
because everyone, like even everyone in their menstrual cycle is so different of what they're experiencing, because so many factors feed into how someone would experience their menstrual cycle.
yeah,
And I don't recommend people do that because, like you said, some people feel great in this cycle, but worse in this cycle. And where are
yeah.
your particular symptoms?
Yeah.
So for me, I work in obviously more like pain-based pelvic floor issues, and it's more symptoms like in that sense. And they tend to typically be very similar across women anyway. But
Yeah.
for that type of like performance-based stuff, I've never really thought about it like skill-based work versus
Mm.
maybe intensity-based training as well.
Yeah.
I don't really do programming for athletes like that, but it's really cool to see that
Yeah.
you're teaching them how to actually make
Mm.
these changes in the general programming that
Yeah.
a coach will be giving out, because sometimes they're like, this is the program I have to follow for performance.
Mhm.
It's very fine-tuned. So
Yeah.
yeah, that's really, really cool.
Yeah.
And are they all quite responsive to, like, do they see great benefits in that?
It's funny. It tends to be a little bit half-half, because some people are, and you know what, I was actually I'm one of those athletes that were half-half as well. Like, I remember when I read the research originally about the pregnancy, when I was preparing for pregnancy, right? I was reading the research, and one of the research documents that I read basically said that when you're on the pill, the combined oral contraceptives, so progesterone, estrogen, you lose 5 to 8% of your performance or
Mm,
ability, your trainability and your performance. And I was like,
yeah.
what? Nah, I don't believe that. I don't believe it. And I was on the pill, right? And so no matter what day of the week you got me, unless I was really sick, like I wouldn't do
Yep.
something. But for me, I was like full tilt every single time. And I was one of the older athletes in the team. By the time I got to the Waratahs program, I was 34. When did I have my daughter? 36? No, sorry, 33, 34. And so, like, I was at the front. I was a forward. I was at the front of the pack when it came to my Broncos. When it came to strength training, I'm like, if somebody told me that the pill influenced my
Mm,
performance, I'd be like, I'll just scrunch that piece of paper up. That's not relevant to me because I'm different. But that's what I also
yeah.
tell the athletes as well. And I'm like, take it with a grain of sand. And I said, apply it to your situation and how you feel. If something's not right, I would say something is not right. Maybe you should ask yourself a couple of questions. Am I sleeping right? Am I eating right? Am I recovered? Is my
Mm,
cycle normal? Is there anything that's kind of throwing you off a little bit that you probably actually haven't had a look at because you're in a high intensity program and you've got a whole lot of pressure to perform? Ask
yeah.
yourself that question.
Okay.
But I said, if there's nothing there and like you're able to perform and you can do this, then do it. Don't let a bit of
Piece
paper,
of paper
basic.
tell you.
Exactly.
We
It's
could
just
talk
a piece
about
of
that
paper.
all day,
Yeah,
couldn't we? Like
100%.
how relevant is some of this research?
Yeah.
So does that mean like we do need to consider other things like the nutrition and the recovery as more important across the menstrual cycle as well, rather than the actual training load maybe itself? Like I know you said
Yeah.
earlier you knew you weren't eating enough.
Yep.
Now that's kind of like what you discovered. So is that something we should
Mm.
be more mindful of?
Yeah. Oh, look, I think everything, like, I think you have to take each pillar of sporting performance. And if you
Mm,
take that sporting performance out and you just look at the general population. So, like, I work with elite athletes, but I also work with the general population. All those pillars are exactly the same. It's just the intensity, the load at which you
mm,
apply it, right? So, I look at what are those pillars of health and are we getting everything mostly right there. So for me, I kind of find, I would say 100%, it's not even like a guess, it's 100% of my clients that I see, non-athlete based, athlete based, are not eating enough food.
yeah.
And that can be influenced by, your background, where your family's from, where you live, what you do, social media. Social media is ridiculous at the moment, what people follow on there. But I find 100% of the time they're not actually eating enough. And there's usually preconceptions about, why. So as soon as I tell a female athlete, especially a female athlete, I'm like, if you're training more than 20 hours a week, you need to be having carbohydrates every single day. And I'm like, there's also the timing of carbohydrates, when it comes to sporting performance. And one of the questions that I always ask the group is, I'm like, pop your hand up if you eat before training. And they're like, cool, yep, yep. And I'm like, okay, keep your hand up if you eat 3 hours before training. And everyone's like, yep. And I'm like, okay, 2 hours before training, hands come down. 1 hour before training, 30 minutes before training, who eats after training, 30 minutes after training, and it's just crickets. And it's like,
Really?
yeah, and it's kind of, and like you have to, from a physiology perspective,
Mm,
when you have to explain it to the general population is, when it comes to strength and conditioning, you actually have to stress your body. You have to go run around in the park. You have to go and lift some heavy shit, whatever it may, like you have to stress your body first to cause all these changes to happen in your body. And I said, where the magic actually happens is when you stop, because your body will sit there and go, holy heck, what did you just do to me? And then what it needs to do in that rest time is
yeah.
consolidate. It goes, okay, so how do I make sure that I don't have all these crazy hormone changes? How do I make sure that when I have that stress applied to my body again, that I can actually tolerate it better? How can I
Mm.
make sure, how do I do that? And I said, how you do that is nutrition and sleeping. And I said, they're the two factors that I absolutely cannot talk about enough when it comes to female athletes, but even non-athletes is like, what are you doing to maximize your recovery? How much nutrition are you eating? Are you eating enough of the good stuff to help your body consolidate at night time?
I mean, we're also pretty lucky in the sense that if we don't do that well, that's your menstrual cycle is affected.
Yep.
Like you will 100% see changes in your menstrual cycle and you can almost be like, oh, I'm not eating enough. Whereas
Yeah.
like, I mean, dudes, they don't get that. They're not like, oh,
No.
mate, you're not eating enough. I mean, not that I
No.
would ever feel like they would not eat enough, but I mean, I'm sure they do in some scenarios. But I mean, that's a pretty good indicator as to say like, mate, like, hello, you just
Yeah.
haven't quite mastered your training load and
Yeah,
recovery.
yeah. And I tell people, I'm like, all you need, I was like, for you to just wake up and sit there and breathe, for your heart to beat, for your body to digest food, for
Mm,
all these internal changes. I said, you basically need a certain amount of energy for your body just to do that. And I said, if you, as a human being, are not eating enough food to just do that basic function, I said, little things will start to change in your body. And I said, if you're not actually aware of it, it'll hit you like a ton of bricks when
Yeah.
it does happen. And I said, it usually at that point, you're probably at a critical point that it'll take some time for you to actually recover and feel better from it. But I said, if you can start being aware of repeated tiredness, your cycle might be all over the place, you don't have energy, your energy levels are off, your mood's off, there's something
Mm,
not quite right. You're not recovering from niggles, you're getting injured, you're getting ill. Like women tend to get a lot more respiratory or upper tract infections. And
mm,
I'm like, you just got to be aware of these signs and be like, okay, take a step back. I'm like, I might need to rest a little bit more. Am I eating enough food? Because we
yeah.
just sometimes just go full throttle, right? And don't even worry about those signs.
Yep. And I feel like the athlete population, whether that's like really active generally, but like general pop or like elite level
Mm,
athlete, they are really good at ignoring signs of like
yeah,
pain or intolerance or like I'm tired because it's like, no, I'm here for performance and I'm here for goal
yeah,
and I'm driven. And you're just like, I'll be right, I'll be right, I'll be right. And they
yeah,
just don't listen.
yeah,
And sometimes I find that the education around
yeah.
like you need to be listening here
Yeah. And
is
I think that's
important.
why, like, I like to have sporting organizations. Like, I pretty much contact when the sporting organizations contact me, and I'm like, tell me what you do in your program. What does your program look like? How long does it go for? What are the people working in your program? And the reason why I
Mm,
do that is because one, I've been in those programs, but I don't, I sometimes, I don't critique, how do I word it? Is I'm not necessarily like when I went through my pregnancy at rugby, they didn't know what to do with an athlete like me, even coming back postpartum. They didn't know what to do with an athlete like me. Now, I
mm,
don't blame the health professionals that were involved in the program because it was the program that didn't actually allow for the time and people to be involved to help support somebody like me. So for me, I take a big step back and I look at the organization. I'm like, what are you actually doing to support female athletes better? Because I said, if you're condensing the program, and what you're expecting from female athletes in a short amount of time, you're actually contributing to the risk of them
problem.
being injured and
Yeah.
illness. Like because you ACL injuries, right? You'll read plenty of documentation out there that says women are more susceptible to ACL injuries because they're females. I'm like, is that the case? Or do you look at the whole load management and go, well, if females are only starting to compete at elite level sports when they're 16, 17, 18, and they have
Mm,
to perform at the same level over a 6, 9 month period, whereas a male counterpart has had 10 years to do the exact same thing. I'm like, is
yeah.
it being a female that causes the ACL injury, or is it the program that doesn't actually allow the appropriate strength and conditioning? Mm.
Yeah, I've never thought about it like that. And they're just testing it on women, so they're assuming it's a female-based issue. Yeah,
Yeah.
right.
So
See
there's
the research,
sometimes
man. Can you
bias,
trust it?
there's sometimes bias in the research itself, right?
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. So speaking of you like having a baby, transitioning into pregnancy, this pops up a lot for me with like what because I see a lot of like I want to say like everyday athletes, like they're like
Yeah.
really passionate about exercise and
Yeah,
sport and
love it.
performance, but not like elite. You know,
Nah.
they're not elite. They
They're all
might want to be.
athletes as far as I'm concerned.
I mean, everyone's an athlete if you're doing exercise in my books.
100%.
But like how do we go about supporting like athletes or more everyday athletes or
Mm,
elite level athletes when they are transitioning into pregnancy? There's
yeah.
so much on this. Like I see this a lot in the CrossFit scene. I see a
Yeah.
lot of CrossFitters and they're all like, oh, they're pregnant. They shouldn't be doing all those loads and this is dangerous and someone should be supporting her and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
What's the go here? What do we
Yeah.
like?
You
Give
know
us some
what?
insight.
And again, you go back to what people are products of their environment, right?
Mm,
So depending on what they've been exposed to in their life, that's going to form their ideas and opinions about what they see in front of them. Whether you take that information on board or not is another thing. When it comes to physical activity and pregnancy, physical activity guidelines here in Australia, and I think in Canada as well, as some of the best guidelines that I've read, applied
yeah.
myself, going through my pregnancy and physical activity, is keep doing the physical activity that you would normally do. If something doesn't feel right, probably doesn't feel right. You need to adjust it, modify it, or take it out completely, or work with a health professional that can help you modify that. Um,
Mm.
and
That's
I do
something
that. Sorry, go on.
Sorry, that's something you found hard, wasn't it? Like actually finding
Mm.
someone who knew how to help or what to
Yeah.
advice to give. That's kind
Yeah.
of how you went down the whole like
Yeah. I so pretty
EP
much
side of
through
it.
my first through my first trimester, I continued to train. So we were pretty much in the thick of preseason training for club and Super W. So I knew I was pregnant. My other half, he was kind of like, oh, should you be doing that? And my brother from another mother, you don't, I got this. And it was just through the information that I've read. I'm like, okay, cool. So I can still go pretty full throttle. I was still doing all my contact drills,
Were
basically
you
at that
contact drills?
100% doing judo, like, yep, 100%. But the baby, like at
Wow.
that point in time, like how teeny tiny is that thing? And it's in the deepest part of your pelvis, right?
Yeah,
So
that's
for me,
true.
I'm like, there were no issues, no concerns with that. Once I started to get to the second trimester, I think it would have been week 14, I probably pulled, like I actually pulled myself out, like, because I was like, I'm
Yeah,
just about
okay.
to get my results back. It's a contact sport. That's a big indication for like, okay, if you are in a high risk activity or high risk sport, you start to pull yourself out of it. So I was
Yep.
doing my contact through my first trimester. Um, Pretty much did the calls to Super W side, club side that not available for selection. So my club side did an amazing job. They allowed me to come to training, allowed me to come and help out with coaching, had me
Mm,
they were comfortable to have me to go to the gym as well. But I recognized that the S&C wasn't comfortable having somebody like me in the gym. So I chose not to go because I didn't want to
okay.
make her uncomfortable in that training environment.
Yep.
So I ended up reaching out and I didn't get any support from the Super W side. Um, so I ended up reaching out to researchers here in Australia and overseas. So Kirsty Elliott Sale was a really big researcher, or she is a really big researcher. She's from Ireland, based in England, does a whole lot of work with female athletes. Um, Margie Davenport had a whole lot of like she has phenomenal research in pregnancy, and Mel Heyman, she's from the CQU here in
Mhm.
I say here in Queensland, up in Queensland. So I basically reached out to these researchers and like, say, this is who I am, this is what I'm doing, this is my current training load. Um, I was an athlete, I had ego, and I'm like, if I can keep doing it, I'm going to keep doing it.
Yeah,
Um,
100%. That's the same
but
as every athlete I see, which is why I'm asking.
Yeah. And so yeah, it was through reaching out to those guys saying, Noella, you don't have to hit PBs. You don't need to be doing this. You're growing a baby. You can still train at a high level. You can still lift. And they basically told me everything that I know and everything that I researched. But I had to have external people who were sort of professionals in this space. But even like I reached out to a sports medicine doctor who worked with the Matildas. She still works with the Matildas. And I just said, look, I just want some guidance. This is where I am. This is what I'm doing. I'm going to need health professionals supporting me on my postpartum return to sports. Um, but I did that through my clinical background and
Yeah, with your
contacts that
own
I,
knowledge.
and it for female athletes and even the general population, there's still a lot of people who are working with this population that are saying, no, you need to rest. No, don't do that. Don't do anything that exerts this and that. Whereas I think there probably just needs to be more awareness that physical activity actually improves so many health, reduces the risk of so many health complications, not only for you, but the baby. And that's just
Mm.
10 minutes of walking every single day. For
Yeah,
somebody who does nothing to 10 minutes of walking, the phenomenal health impacts that that has for the general pop, for the gen pop, people
yep,
don't talk about that.
yep. It's such a crazy time. I think there's just so much fear of like risk. Like, oh, just don't do anything and like then you can't be blamed.
Yeah.
Something wants to go wrong. And like I see a lot of fertility based clients. So a
Mm.
lot of them are like, I've had a miscarriage and it was just after I went to the gym. Like, is this something I should not be doing? I'm too scared to go to the gym now. And I'm like, mate, there are many factors involved in that. And the gym is definitely not the problem. Like,
100%.
no way. There is
Yeah.
no way that, I mean, unless there's like placenta issues and all that would be high risk anyway. You would have been told not to
Yep.
do that in the first place.
Yep.
But they're so fearful of like the exercise being the problem. I'm like,
Yeah.
mate, the problem is sitting down in the lounge.
No,
Like,
100%.
maybe not. It's a bit bad, um,
Well,
but yeah, I
really.
mean, I'd love to dive into more about the fertility side of things. But I think that might
Yeah.
be something we could talk about in the second episode because I know that you can't spend heaps more time with us today. Um, So I'm being mindful of that. But I
Mm.
think that's something that we might talk about another time and
Yeah.
dive into. But if clinicians that are
Mm.
looking into female specific athletes like that, there is, or even like more healthy everyday athlete type population, there is a lot we can do in that space. I think you definitely have highlighted here like a lot of strategies, a lot of education,
Mm.
rather than the actual prescription of things. And it's
Yeah.
more like fine tuning things that they're already doing with maybe coaches or something. I think that's a really cool space for us, because a
Yeah.
lot of the times we're like, what is the application of exercise prescription and what would we be prescribing? And
Yep.
sometimes it's not about prescription of actual programs. It's like,
Yep.
do this instead, or how do you modify this, or things to be mindful of at this time in
Yeah.
your programming. So is there anything that you think would be one top tip to take away for a clinician here listening that's like, oh, I want to learn more about this, or like I've got this
Mm.
population, or is there any piece of advice that you
Yeah.
would give out? Or
Look, I think one thing that we probably haven't sort of touched in, we spoke about the exercise prescription side of things. It doesn't really change too much. But again, you go to working with the female population and the research, all the research that's been done over the many years, majority, the research is on male counterparts, right? Whereas when you're looking to do physical training or strength and conditioning, any health work, even with females, it's like, yeah, there are some things that are a little bit different for us as females. How we get from A to B for a male to female is going to be different. The goal will be the same, but how we get from A to B is going to be a little bit different. I look at the sporting programs, for example, and you're working with female athletes whose pelvic floor is completely different to the male counterpart. So strength and conditioning, strength and conditioning will be pretty much exactly the same. But, for me, some of the things I do like to talk about is I'm like, what are you actually doing as part of your prehab and activation work that will set you up for some really good functional lift, push, pull exercises? And as I said, it's something that we kind of didn't talk about. But yeah, that's a huge area that I like to work with when it
so
comes to females.
is this sort of like based on like anatomy, like pelvic anatomy as well? Because I know
Yeah.
like glute stability, like even just like the shape of the pelvis being so different.
Yeah.
This is something I actually did want to talk about, and I thought about bringing it up today, but I was like, I feel like that's a whole episode in itself.
You know what?
It's
It
like,
probably is.
yeah, just like I guess the physiological differences, even in like muscle
Mm.
tissue fiber type,
Yeah.
pelvic alignment, or like anatomical, like bony
Mm.
mark changes,
Yeah.
positioning of the body in certain lifts versus
Yeah.
male. Like I know all of this type of stuff is super different. Fuel sourcing, like
Yeah.
maybe like more like actual performance-based changes
Yeah.
that you would make. But I feel like that's a very deep dive. And that's why I didn't write it down on the list to talk about, because I'm like, we'll talk about that one another time. I'm just voluntarily getting you back to the second episode. You don't notice.
Yes. Yes. Nah, all good.
Um,
I'd love it.
but that's the type of thing I'd love to talk more
Mm.
about, in a sense of like what we could do prescriptive wise.
Yeah.
But yeah, I guess we might leave it just at that with like at the moment, and we'll touch
Yes.
base maybe another time. But yeah, thank you so much for all your insight. It is extremely valuable coming from someone who's also been an athlete and seen what the programs look like from the
Mm.
inside, because I feel like that's why you're like, mate, this is a problem. Like I never got told any of this, and I can see the gap there. So it's really, really helpful. But otherwise, do you have any like work social media pages or things that people can follow along if they want to,
Mm.
be part of your world?
Yeah, look, email, I say email, website, shiftinghealth.com.au. I'm terrible on socials, just because I get so
I know you
distracted.
follow though. You follow along on social.
Yes, I do. I do.
What I might do is actually
Um,
I'll put them all in the show notes for people so they can like reach
um,
out and see what you do a little bit more and get a bit more
yeah,
about you if they want to. So
legend.
I'll share them. But otherwise, thank you so much for today. I really
Thank you
appreciate
so
that.
much. Thank you for
And
having me, but thank you for all the wonderful work you do as an exercise physiologist in
oh,
this space. As I said, like when I first read your podcast and started listening, I'm like, yeah, somebody doing something different, somebody challenging the status quo. We need to have more people like you doing what you do.
bless. That's so nice to hear, because I think I've talked about this so many times before. I feel sometimes like I'm talking to like, does anyone care? But it's nice
Yes,
to hear. It is nice to hear. But we'll be doing. I'll keep doing more. Don't you worry.
for
There's more coming.
sure.
But anyway, thank you so much again, and we'll be in touch, I guess, soon.
For sure. Talk soon. Have a good one.